We the People is brought to you by Team Kennedy.
We the people!
They're going to fight, and we all have to learn to start talking with each other. And we have to focus on things that we believe in. The king and queen look out of their castle and they say, we're okay, because everybody's fighting each other and nobody's coming over the wall for us. And, I want to lead you all over that wall, stop the rancor, and take back our country.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into We the People right here on News Talk 790 KABC. I do have some sad news. This will be the final episode of We the People right here on News Talk 790 KABC. We thank you if you've listened, and if you are listening now, we thank you for all of the support, and to everybody who came on the show every week making the time for us. Nick Brana, who we'll talk to again this week, as well as Del Bigtree. We're also going to speak to Cameron Sterling. He's doing a lot of work in California, and we just want to talk to him about some of the work that he's been doing for independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And that's what I want to talk about in this last episode. I want to talk about how we're just making the case. In no way do I want to, lecture you. I never want it to come off as a lecture. Maybe venting, but I never want it to come off as me lecturing you about why you have to do this, because you don't have to do anything. You don't have to vote for somebody you don't want to vote for. You don't have to do anything. And that goes with whether it's a mandate of any sort, whatever it might be. You never have to do anything. You always have the right to choose. And that's what's great about this country, and that's what's great about the system that we live in, is because we do have that right to choose. Because some people aren't granted that in other countries. I mean, just sitting here and talking to you, some of the things that I've said over the last few weeks, I mean, if this were a different place or even a different time in history, whoa, watch out. But thankfully, we have the First Amendment, and we always will have the First Amendment, because that's what we stand for. And that's why I support someone like independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., because he's had that right taken away. He was censored, and no one, I don't care what you say. And I know you're thinking, but what about the extremes that say this and this? I know, and I hear you. I hear you. But they have the right to say it. As crazy as that sounds, especially in today's climate, they have the right to say it. And you have the right to disagree and say something back. That's what makes this country incredible. I mean, for me to have the opportunity to come on here and speak with you and to talk with you and for you to hear me out, I am thankful. I'm not only thankful to you, I'm thankful to Del Bigtree and Amaryllis Kennedy for giving me the opportunity to do so, as well as independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for kind of giving me the keys and saying, hey, go on, go do it. I will forever be thankful, as well as the people at KABC for giving us the opportunity here. They could have said no, but they didn't, and we're thankful. And to all of you who are getting in your cars after a long day, and I know it's a long day, turning this on and saying, you know what, let's just listen. Let's zone out a little bit while we're driving home. Thank you. It does mean a lot. And it means a lot to us here on the campaign. It's very cool that some of you, that you have given us the opportunity to come into your homes, to come into your cars, whether you're listening to us on the podcasts, on KABC's website, wherever it may be. We're going to talk to Nick Brana. He's a senior advisor and in charge of national ballot access. The campaign here, we won a pretty big lawsuit in Hawaii. Because once again, the dirty tricks, they're going to do all the dirty tricks they can to try to undermine you, to try to take away your voice, to try to take away a choice. That's what they want to do. Ultimately, all of this is about control. And it's not just control of the White House. It's not just control of Congress, of the Senate. It's not just control of that. It's control over you. Because if they can determine who says what and how they say it, we've talked about it, reporters who have gotten in trouble or arrested. We've talked about all this. If they can control what you hear, they can control what you think. And now with AI, you can't even believe what you see. And I noticed this on Facebook a lot, and I need to remind people of this. Remember when you were a kid and you'd see something on TV and your parents go, well, don't believe everything you see on TV. this is a reminder, especially now with AI. Don't believe everything you see on Facebook. Don't believe everything you see online. I see a lot of people falling for pictures that are fake, and they think that it's real, and I'm looking at it, and to the point I'm calling friends of mine and I'm going, that's fake, right? Look at the person's eyes, they're blurred. There are ways to tell. Anyways, don't let AI, don't let these fake images, these fake things get in the way of you being able to think openly, because that's what all of this is. That's what it's all distractions. It's all distractions to get you to stop thinking about everything that's going on that has been so poorly run in this country. All of these little side things, they're all distractions because they know that you won't focus on the people who should be held accountable because they're scared. The way it's so funny, isn't it? When there's something going on in your local neighborhood, I'm going to use local politics as an example because that's where you can really see it. When there's something going on and, let's say there's a pothole. This happened in my community recently. There was a pothole and they needed it filled. And people's tires were blowing out because of how deep this pothole was. And what happened? Nothing. Until they started making phone calls. Until people realized it was an election year. Because the moment you start making phone calls, the moment, whether it's local, national, whatever it might be, the moment a politician starts to feel that heat, they know, oh man, I might lose my job. They get real nervous real quick. And that's when they start listening to you. Because if there's anything that is taken away from these last few weeks, I hope it is that you realize you deserve better than what you have been getting. And that's no matter what state, because I know nationally people listen to the podcast. If you're in Ohio, California, Texas, Michigan, Iowa, wherever you may be, I hope you realize you deserve better. Your tax dollars deserve to be spent better. All of these things that are crumbling around you and you're looking and you're saying, I don't know what to do anymore. It's because you deserve better. The moment they realize we pay attention is the moment they get very nervous because they know we may or may not vote for them. That's when you start getting phone calls back. That's when they start returning emails. We deserve better, and we deserve more choices. We know what these two can do. When it comes to the presidential race, we know what these two can do. We've been there. We've done that. And I don't want to hear excuses. I don't. And I know that COVID and everything that happened could be taken as an excuse, but what isn't an excuse is that the person who was making those decisions had been in that position since Ronald Reagan. Or the person that was making the calls on whether or not to go to war, as independent presidential candidate has called him, the model for a swamp creature. Or we go with the last 4 years, where clearly things are not being run right. Could you imagine let's take positions out of it. Let's just talk neighbor to neighbor. Could you imagine running over to your neighbor's house, stealing 30% of their grass, putting it on your lawn, and they go, "Hey, you took my grass." And you go, "No, I didn't." No, man, come on, that grass was there the whole time, man. Nobody took your grass. And then you go, "Okay." And then you just walk away. None of us would do that. And we don't have to do that when it comes to politics. I urge you all, and I'm not just talking about the policies of independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., although I do like them. I'm urging you all to actually look at their policies and don't vote out of fear. Don't let the news anchor telling you that democracy is going to go away dictate how you vote. Don't let a news anchor telling you that, well, this candidate just doesn't stand a chance, so you shouldn't even go out and vote. Don't let that sway your vote. It's yours. Voting is special. I know we've done it for a long time, but we really gotta understand how special it is to have that right to vote. It's a pretty big deal. And they don't have that in other places. So make sure when you vote and you put the ballot in, whether it's computer or not, and you see the little thing print, you see that little window where you can see you voted for, take some pride in that. That's a big deal. Not many places have it like that. That's what I hope is taken away from these last few weeks. Understand who you're voting for. Don't be scared to ask about policy. Don't be scared to research policy, and don't let fear dictate how you vote. Don't let someone else dictate how you vote. And of course, the best way to stay up to date on policies and different things, especially for independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., is by going to the website, Kennedy24.com, and just taking a look, just read. Or go to the YouTube page, Team Kennedy 24, or look up Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on YouTube. You can find bunch of different videos about what he stands for, where he stands on certain things. And see if you like it or not. If you don't, we get it. We understand. I don't think there's ever been a candidate where you've liked 100% of what they had to say or do. If there is, that's impressive. I'm just saying, that's really impressive. When we come back, we're going to talk to Nick Brana. He is a top advisor, and he's in charge of National Ballot Access. What if I told you that some volunteers took on $1 million lawyers and won? Nick Brana is going to talk about that next. We're going to talk to Cameron Sterling after news, and after that, we're going to talk to Del Bigtree right here on News Talk 790 KABC. This is We the People. This was paid for by Team Kennedy. Welcome back to News Talk 790 KABC. I am your host, Jake Underwood, and of course, this is We the People. By the way, this is the final episode, so we had to bring him on because he is the one with the knowledge. He knows what he's talking about. He is in charge of National Ballot Access. Of course, I'm talking about one of the top advisors in the campaign, Mr. Nick Brana. Nick, thank you for taking the time out for us today.
Hey, Jake. Great to talk to you again.
So, Nick, we had an all-hands call a few days ago, and I want to ask you about it because I didn't know that it was this in-depth, and I didn't know all of the stuff that happened with it, but there was a major lawsuit in Hawaii, and Team Kennedy came out on top. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So this was the first challenge that the DNC has made to our ballot access nationwide, and the DNC has, they've hired this entire team over at their national committee to basically try to stop our ballot access. They're spending millions of dollars across the country running around and doing this rather than, actually, I guess, representing people in government. But it was amazing because in this first challenge, we defeated their first attempt to take us off the ballot. But not only did we defeat it, it was an entire all-volunteer team in Hawaii, our amazing team there, led by Kim Hain and Susan Alden and Michael Moskowitz. They took on the DNC's lawyers and their staff in a state elections hearing, and they defeated them just as a volunteer team. And so it's just an amazing, really inspiring David versus Goliath story about really what can be done when we stand up and fight back against the duopoly.
So just so I can get this straight, it was a group of Team Kennedy volunteers taking on the $1 million team that the DNC put together, and the team of Kennedy volunteers beat the $1 million team of the DNC lawyers.
That's exactly it. And so and it started off with our volunteers collecting 3 times as many signatures as we needed in Hawaii, turning them in, and then we thought, well, for sure, there's no way the DNC can challenge us, and the Democrats and big money interest groups that don't want to see Bobby on the ballot, because he challenges their interests. For sure, what are they going to do? There's no way they can kind of, try to knock us off the ballot because we turned 3 times as many. So they made this convoluted challenge to our We the People party rules, since we're created a party ballot line in Hawaii. And they tried to make that challenge instead of a challenge to the signatures. And our volunteer team then, and they submitted that challenge to the Hawaii Election Board, which called a hearing, and our team in that hearing successfully defeated all of them. And that means that We the People Hawaii and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will be on the ballot in Hawaii.
It just goes to show. I know that we say it a lot, and people, and especially within the campaign, we hear it all the time, people power. But it definitely is a real thing, and you can stand up to the powers that be and go, we're not going to fall for, we're not falling for it. We're not going to stand for this. We're going to stand up. And that's what they did there in Hawaii, and now they have that third choice. Wow, that's incredible. So we were talking a little bit before we started talking here on the show. You're a busy guy. That's all I could say, is that you're extremely busy. What are some of the deadlines and just some of the stuff coming up with different states? What are you working on right now?
Yeah, so right now we're actually working. This is a very intense period in our ballot access process, because ballot access, nationally, we have to collect 1,000,000 signatures to get Bobby on the ballot as independents. The Democrats and Republicans, they have rigged the rules to make it much more expensive and much more time intensive and resource intensive for independents to get on the ballot, because they are afraid of independents who come along like Bobby and offer an alternative to their permanent war, permanent big money captured, big pharma captured governing. And so, and of course they attempt to challenge our ballot access everywhere.
Right.
So now we are in the process of doing two of the biggest states, that is New York and Texas. And in Texas, we will actually be done getting on the ballot on May 13th. In New York, we'll be done on May 28th. And we are ahead of schedule in both states. So I'm very much looking forward to finishing up and announcing those two, because Texas is one of the states, the state with the second most electoral votes, only behind California. So those are going to be some really huge wins, and they're going to really telegraph that we have the strength not only to get on the ballot in smaller states, but in these absolute biggest states with the highest requirements.
And, it's interesting because you brought up two states that, to just, if you're talking to somebody, they seem to be like complete polar opposites when it comes to politics. You think of Texas, you think of deep red state, tobacco chewing, spitting type redneck cowboy good old boys. And then you go to New York, and that's more of, kind of leans more blue, collared, shirts, suits. So very interesting that in both of those states, independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is not only going to get on the ballot, but is ahead of schedule. What are some of the challenges that come with like the different states? Like, for instance, in California, I know that there are a lot of laws. What are some of the different laws in different states that you're just looking at and you're going, this seems so asinine and backwards when it comes to getting somebody on the ballot?
Gosh, there are ridiculous rules everywhere. Some states, for example, have a rule where if there is a stray mark on the petition anywhere, the petition just gets discarded.
Wow.
Like if there's like a dot of ink, Other states have rules where you have to pay them to validate the signatures. Another state, North Carolina, has a rule where you have to write the date that you signed, the petitioners, or everybody who's signing the petition. They have to write the date in European format. That is the day first, and then the month, and then the year. I mean, nobody does that, and so there's just innumerable little rules. There's another one of the worst is where if you, as a circulator, as one of our volunteer petitioners, for example, if they sign another petition for a candidate who is running for president in a different party or as an independent, then all of the petitions that they collected for us, for Bobby, are invalidated. So there are just innumerable crazy little rules. Ballot access has been turned into this kind of Byzantine minefield, legal minefield that is meant to be unnavigable, so that independent candidates really never get to take on the major parties. And this is the result of decades and decades and decades of horrible rules compounding on each other. as people get more and more frustrated with the system and more look towards alternatives. And in the big picture, there's about the number of people who are independent has gone from, maybe about 30% to about half the country in the last few decades, and that's why rather than improving their policies or standing up for what people want or fighting for people, the two parties have just tried to kind of, fortify their electoral monopoly.
Nick Brana, thank you so much for taking time for us today. Real quick, before I let you go, this is the last show, so I want you to be able to kind of put a little earworm in the voters' ear. What do you want them to know about independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
Bobby is the first candidate in my life who really has a credible chance to win as an independent, and who has the history of fighting corporate power, not just when he decided to run for office, like so many politicians, but his entire life. He's been taking on Monsanto. He's been taking on big petrochemical companies and polluting companies and agribusiness. He's been taking on the military industrial complex. And that's the kind of person we need in office. And we are out of time. We can't wait another 4 years. We need this change now. And that's why everybody's got to get out there, every state you're in, and vote for Bobby Kennedy.
Well said, Nick Brana. Thank you again for your time, and have an incredible day.
Thanks, Jake. Let me just say you've been an amazing host of the show.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Of course, the wonderful Nick Brana. He is in charge of the National Ballot Access, as well as many other things, and you can hear some of the obstacles that he has to overcome. While we were talking to him there, different laws, different things, and of course, if you want to know anything when it comes to ballot access in your state, you can by going to Kennedy24.com. Go to ballot access, click on your state, and you can find out all of the different things that you need. Like, for instance, my home state of Ohio, there's a lot of different rules. I mean, it's simple things like what size paper, crazy stuff. Speaking of something else that's crazy, but this is a good kind of crazy. We have an event coming up in Nashville. If you've heard me talk about it, you've heard me speak about the Night of Laughter in LA, the Night of Laughter in Detroit. Well, Nashville, we're coming to you. That, of course, is country and comedy with RFK Jr. It's in Nashville. It's only fitting that it has some country. Yeehaw. Nashville, known for their country music as well as comedy. You get the opportunity to see comedians like Rob Schneider, Dave Landau, Jim Brewer, Jimmy Shin, Catherine Blanford, Mike Binder, and Jeff Dye, and that's the comedy. But what about the country? I know you're asking, you're going, but what about the country side of it? Well, let me tell you. We're going to have Kaylee Bishop, as well as John Carter Cash and Anna Christina Cash. And if that's not enough for you, we're also going to have presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr., as well as vice presidential candidate Nicole Shanahan. That's going to be Wednesday, May 15th in Nashville at 7 o'clock. More information can be found at Kennedy24.com, as well as we have an auction that ends tonight. A lot of cool stuff up there. You get one-on-one conversations with different people in the campaign. A lot of stuff going on there. You can check that out also by going to Kennedy24.com. We're going to pause for news. When we come back, we're going to talk to Cameron Sterling. He's doing a lot of work in California. We're going to get to know more about that when we return right here on News Talk 790 KABC. This was paid for by Team Kennedy.
How do you change that? How do you make them serve the public interest again? How do you make them templates for integrity? How do you make them the gold standard agencies that serve the public interest that they once were when I was growing up? And I know how to do it. And, a lot of politicians get in and make that promise. Then they get in there and they start acting like the last guy. And you say, what happened to this person? And, it breaks your faith in human beings. And I can tell you that will never, ever happen to me. And I'm going to fix it. And I can't do it alone. I need an army. I need all of you to help me get this done.
struggle. Can't worry about who ain't with us. We got each other. We black and beautiful.
Welcome back to News Talk 790 KABC. This is, of course, We the People. I am your host, Jake Underwood, and we have a guest. You know him if you're in California, because more than likely you've seen him out, whether or not he's getting signatures, handing out signs. He's at different events. Of course, we're talking about Cameron Sterling. He's the ballot access coordinator for California. Cameron, thank you for making the time for us today.
Absolutely, Jacob. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
So let me ask you, because I know you've been busy. That was one of the first things when, we were looking for somebody to bring on the show. Almost everybody, they were like, hey, you got to get Cameron on. You got to get Cameron on. He's been doing a lot. So I want to ask, what are you doing to engage the boomer vote? Because that seems to be the one that's hard to get right now.
You know, with the boomer vote, it's an important one. And currently I've been working on a project to try to do a bit of outreach to some of the retirement communities and some of the boomer dense areas, whether that be in, California, Texas, mostly Florida as well. So definitely trying to do a bit of outreach there to see if we can kind of spread the good word of Kennedy and kind of get the boomers involved and up to date on what it is Bobby's all about and try to get their support behind him for the campaign.
What are some of the objections that you're noticing when it comes to getting the support in that community?
Honestly, I feel like the biggest objection I hear is mostly just retort regarding their support for Trump. It's it seems to be a very almost I don't want to say cult-like following, but it certainly seems to be the case in some of these older retirement communities. It seems to be very pro-Trump, and anything outside of that, it's just static to them.
Yeah, it's cult. I wouldn't say cult. I'm right there with you with that, but yeah, it's passionate. Let's say passionate. That's the best way to put
Absolutely.
that. So let me ask you, being a young voter, because I mean, when I think I'm like a few years older than you. I don't think it's that much different, but I know when I was excited to vote when I turned 18. Like, I looked forward to it, and there aren't many people like that now, but you seem to be one of them. You're engaged. What are some of the things you're noticing from young voters?
Well, I'll tell you what, just a brief background on myself. The first election I was eligible for was the 2016 election, and I did not even bother registering until January of this year because the candidate selections for each of the election in 2016 and 2020 was abysmal. It seemed like there wasn't much of any option, and it just, neither of the candidates from either of those elections were really engaging enough, really spoke to me. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of what young voters are doing is they kind of have adopted this bit of a cynical, almost nihilistic worldview, especially towards politics, because having grown up with access to the internet and all this freedom of information, you kind of get a better sense of how the world really kind of works, and you're not kind of being told to think one way or the other as previous generations may have been, kind of guided by this narrative, whether that be through network television or printed news.
Yeah, no, well said. So let me ask you, I understand, and this is the one that everybody's been talking about, and I want to hear more about it. You had a lot of Earth Day projects going on. Can you share some of that with us?
Absolutely. Actually, just last weekend, we actually did a Santa Monica beach cleanup. We had about 20 volunteers and supporters show up. We kind of did a bit of a sweep along the beach, picking up a variety of trash. Even folks who weren't originally signed up to join us just came up to us and said, hey, what are you guys up to? And we're like, oh, we're doing a beach cleanup with the Kennedy campaign. They're like, I would love to be involved. Can I join? I'm like, absolutely. Here's a pair of gloves and a trash bag. Right. Would you like to sign up to be a volunteer?
So let me ask you this, and then I'll let you go. So what I like to do for the final question, and especially this being the final episode, I want you to be able to get your opinion out there. So if you were able to be a voice in someone's ears, they're getting ready to walk into a voting booth and vote, what would you like them to know about independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
I would say that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is probably the only candidate who is sincere, down to earth, and actually speaks the truth. A lot of politicians, you'll notice, whether it's a debate or just asking them questions point blank, they tend to tiptoe around the question and just deliver a very long, flowery explanation that never really addresses the question at hand. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the only candidate who's actually directly answering these questions with very well thought out, well articulated, and well researched sort of solutions.
This, of course, Cameron Sterling, ballot access coordinator there in California. Don't work yourself too hard. Try to take a break, relax once in a while. But thank you for all the hard work you're doing out there.
I really appreciate it, Jacob. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you again to Cameron Sterling, the ballot access coordinator here in California, for his time today. What I want to do is, because we had the comedy event in Detroit, and there were a few comedians we didn't get the chance to talk to last time because they joined us on the road. And, of course, the first one that I want to play for you is Dave Landau. You can follow him on Instagram, Dave.Landau. That's DAVE.LANDUA. Very funny guy, and we had the chance to talk to him backstage at his comedy set in Detroit. We are here with Dave Landau. Dave, thank you so much, and I just want to say you killed it out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And it was... because we notice crowds. This is the second one we're doing, and sometimes that connection just isn't there. But with you, it was definitely there, and you kind of told a story, and the crowd followed along. So I just want to ask, what is that like when you know the crowd is engaged and they're following and they're kind of hanging on each word that you're saying? What's that feeling like?
It was fun. I figured, why not, if we're going to talk about politics, we're going to be honest, why not tell a story about drug use and passing out in a toga and a Burger King crown and being arrested, and see if they would go with me.
Right.
Because I think it's important to just go, look, I'm flawed and I'm voting for this. Let's be honest about it, about it.
And
it's a good feeling when they do follow you and they're not just terrified. Yeah,
and like I said, you were getting laughs, and I heard belly laughs. They echoed, which is always a good sign. Were you nervous performing in front of a presidential candidate?
I absolutely was.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how far I was supposed to take certain things, and then I wasn't sure how far I was supposed to go at other presidential candidates.
Yeah.
So I was like, I guess I'll just go with mocking me and my body. Yeah, that's what.
Making fun of yourself is that's always a safe bet.
Yeah, it always feels like it's going to be a little bit better
Right.
than just kind of attacking everybody else, and that's why it's just easier to tell my story than go at everybody else's. Although Biden is a pretty good target.
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
Come
What's
on,
up?
man.
Come on.
Hey,
I mean, he did just say that his uncle got eaten by a cannibal, but I don't know if I was supposed to bring that up or not. But it's an amazing thing that we have a leader of the free world who just is allowed to say that. You can't overvalue your house, but you can say your uncle got eaten by, New Guinea cannibals.
Right. It's a crazy time we're living in, to say the least. So we go from what we have now, and I want to ask you about what we could potentially have after November.
Yes.
If you could tell voters something about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., what would it be?
He's honest. He's one of the only people that I've seen that's really brutally honest. And I hate even using the term brutally honest.
Yeah.
It's nice to just see somebody who's just saying what they believe, and they're not deliberately siding with something for likes.
Yeah, well said. Well, thank you for your time. Great job up there. Thank you. And we look forward to next time. Big thank you again to Dave Landau. And she kind of kicked it off. She set the tone for the night. Heather J., what wasn't captured in the interview was right before I started interviewing her. Independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. actually came backstage. He went to the green room real quick, and he, just to thank everybody for being there. And it was a nice little moment. Heather J. was kind of starstruck, if you will, talking to the presidential candidate. So you'll hear us reference that. But without further ado, the hilarious Heather J. and I backstage at the Detroit Night of Laughter with RFK Jr. Incredible job tonight. You got the crowd going. How nerve-wracking is it, if at all? Because, you're a seasoned professional when you're out there. I'm gonna claim it. I'm gonna say that you were, 'cause you got the crowd into it. You did a great job emceeing. Did you have any nerves performing in front of a presidential candidate?
Yeah, that actually was nervous. The crowd, the 3,000 people were nerve-wracking. It was just knowing his eyes because I could see him.
Yeah.
And I could feel him. And I just didn't want to let him down because I know it's an important night for him.
Well, and we didn't get to see it, but right before we started here, he came up to you, he said, thank you, and you did a great job. And you did. You did a wonderful job.
Why didn't you get that?
So what is it, besides sincerity, because we saw that there, what are some of the reasons you support independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
I just think it's important that people have options. I think we need to hear some different points of view. It's a lot of hatred and polarizing commentary, and I think we need a break. I think we just need somebody to talk to us and not talk to the hate. I feel like everybody's talking to the hate. So that's my reason.
And if you get to be that little voice in someone's ear, they're getting ready to walk in to make their vote, what would you want them to know about Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
I think he's listening. I think he's actually listening, and I think that's something that we don't feel. We don't feel heard. So I think he's listening.
All right, well said. Thank you for your time, and a great job out there tonight.
A big thank you to Heather J. as well as all of the other comedians that took part in the Night of Laughter in Detroit with RFK Jr. and friends. And a pretty exciting opportunity coming up if you live in the Denver, Colorado area, and that is a rally that we're going to be holding at the hangar at Stanley Marketplace. That's in Aurora, Colorado. Of course, more information can be found on Kennedy24.com. That's going to be May 19th on a Sunday. That's a Sunday. 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And of course, if you're not able to make it, all of these events are live streamed, including YouTube. That's usually the one that we go with, and that is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Just look him up on YouTube, or Team Kennedy 24 as well. Sometimes YouTube and the other platforms, they don't like us going live, but for some reason Twitch always seems to work, Kennedy 24 TV. When we return, we're going to talk to Communications Director Del Bigtree. That and more when we return right here on News Talk 790 KABC. This is We the People. This was paid for by Team Kennedy. Welcome back to We the People right here on News Talk 790 KABC, the farewell edition, if you will, and it wouldn't be a show without this man. We're going to talk to Communications Director Del Bigtree. Del, it's the last show. Thank you for making time for all of us today.
Man, this has been a blast, and I know we're talking about finding more of a national platform to keep this up. But right now, you've just done such a great job hosting the show, Jake. And, and I think the success as we see now, the whole goal of this, right, was to get ballot access rolling. And now we're steamrolling across the country. So we've got to regroup now and figure out what are we going to do now that we know that we're going to be on the ballot across the country. What's our focus now? So very exciting moment and great time to get together to talk.
Well, Del, thank you for your kind words. I appreciate it. And you talk about getting on the ballot. Michigan this past week, and then, a major lawsuit won in Hawaii to keep ballot access. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, look, to begin with Michigan, battleground state, it's a big one. We look really good in Michigan. We like our chances there. We had an amazing celebration event with, world-renowned comedians coming out, packed a beautiful theater up there in Detroit. And so just, again, and what was so beautiful about that event, the media was asking, what is it about comedy? And I said, the thing about comedy is it really represents what this campaign does, which is heal the divide, coming together. One of the things that we forget about when we get like all this vitriol, when we watch the news and we think, oh man, the other side, the ones that are against us, they are going to ruin this country. Democracy's, hanging in the balance. The republic's going to end. When you sit in a comedy, watching comedians make you laugh, you never look to your left or your right and say, I wonder if they're a Republican or I wonder if they're a Democrat. You're all Americans and you're all laughing about the same crazy experience that's going on in all of our lives. We all live in this country together, and that's really what that Night of Laughter represented. And I've had that thought, watching football games. You go to a football game, you put the jersey on for your team. You don't care if the guy is drinking a beer, the woman that you're, doing fist bumps with is a Republican or a Democrat, and that's what this is all about, right? The celebration of the fact that we're all Americans, we're all in this together, and we're all really bummed out about how this country is being run, how no matter what, whether we're voting for, the candidates from the DNC, they never deliver any of the things they promise us, or the RNC, they never deliver any of the things they're promising us. And that's what's been so spectacular about this independent run. And you talk about Hawaii. Once again, right, the Democratic Party, its name, Democrat, the democracy, this party is going out of its way, promising to sink $100 million into trying to stop us, Bobby Kennedy, from being on the ballot. So that means after we got all of our signatures in Hawaii, they found some tiny little print in one of the contracts about, and thought, let's just, because they've got billions of dollars literally to spend. They're bragging that they're going to spend more money than any presidential candidate in history. A really weird thing to brag about, right?
Yeah.
And still find themselves losing in polls to Donald Trump. It's quite sad. But they went after, basically a loophole and forced us in the courtrooms, forced us to bring our lawyers in But guess what? The truth prevails, as it always does. Our signatures have been validated. We are going to be on the ballot in Hawaii. It won't stop them. They're going to challenge us in every single state, because instead of believing that they have a candidate that can win under all circumstances because they're the best candidate in the House, in the country, they're using every means to make sure that you don't have the freedom of choice, that you don't get a third choice. How is that democracy? There's nothing in our Constitution, there's nothing that our founding fathers said that there's only going to be two parties in this country. This is about, may the best man or woman win. And everybody who wants a voice should have a voice. So from the same party that screams that everybody should have voter access, everybody should be able to get on the phone and vote, or do it, mail in ballots and make it as easy as possible. They don't really want you to have a voice. They want to make it as easy as possible in a system that they want to control. And those days are over, Jake. We're bringing an end to those days. This really is a campaign about the people. And so for everyone out there, whether you're in California right now or all across the country, get out and go ahead and put your signature behind just having another voice. As I've said it before, can you imagine a debate stage with 3 people on it, where it's not just the talking points from the RNC or the talking points for the DNC by whatever puppet they're trying to control? Now you have Bobby Kennedy that's not owned by anybody, speaking reasonable, thought out, historically based facts and truths. Can you imagine what that's going to, the elevation that's going to happen in that experience of watching a debate? Instead of it being some comedy show about who got who, how about a substantive debate about the future of this nation that's hanging in the balance, on the verge of attack from so many different places that we've talked about over the weeks here on this radio show? Whether it's AI technologies and the fact that no one's got their eye on that ball right now except Robert Kennedy Jr., or the fact that we're pressing the places that have people talking about World War III in ways they've never seen more realistic, and certainly not in my lifetime, and moving NATO into Ukraine and breaking the agreement we set with Gorbachev that would never happen, that we knew that would push us closer to nuclear war, or face recognition software and technologies, and the fact that they're passing laws to be able to, spy on Americans, and censorship. I mean, all of these things that are in direct opposition to the dream of America, of freedom, of liberty, life, and the pursuit of happiness. That's what this campaign is about, and I'm just so proud to be a part of it. And may the best man or woman win.
And Del, you talk about the 3 people on the stage, and it to me, I think it's more about just the talking points of each side. If you have somebody there that's not on either side, people are going to have to be honest. Independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being on that stage, they're not going to be able to just throw dirt at one another and think they can get over on it. They're going to actually have to talk policy. They're going to actually have to talk about the things that really matter. And if Biden or Trump are not prepared to do that, it's only going to look better for independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Del, real quick, before I let you go, I always ask this question as kind of like a wrap-up question, so I'm going to ask you. If you get to be that voice in the voters' ear, they're getting ready to step into that booth to make their vote, what do you want them to know about independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr.?
What I want to say, it is nothing that I can say or should say that convince you that Robert Kennedy Jr. should be the next leader of the free world. What I will say is this is the most important election, as everyone is saying, maybe of our lifetime, and certainly it is going to decide so many of the most current and pressing issues that we have ever faced, technological issues, all of it. And as Americans, we should put aside all of the rhetoric, all of the vitriol, and just watch all the videos on Bobby's YouTube channel, or even 2, 3, 4. If 4 or 5 videos in, you're like, you know what, this guy just isn't making any sense to me, he's not resonating with me, fine. You've done your due diligence. Then go listen to Donald Trump, then go listen to Joe Biden, Actually educate yourselves. Don't let the news tell you who you're voting for. Don't let me or Jake tell you who you're going to vote for. Actually go and listen. Don't listen to what someone else's opinion is of someone. Go and say, what have they actually said on the topics that I care about? And I believe when you do that, and what we're seeing in the polls right now as we speak, huge announcements are going to be coming out, over the next several weeks. But what we see is that more and more Americans are saying Robert Kennedy Jr. seems to be the best educated on all of the subjects that matter most to me as an American. And we're seeing it in demographics from young people, number one, up to 45 years old, now pressing and moving towards number one, African Americans. We're gaining ground in Latinos and, number one amongst independents. There's a reason that is happening. And instead of letting mainstream media, whichever one you're listening to, or cable news, tell you what you should think, this is too important to let someone else do your voting for you. Please go listen. Listen to what Robert Kennedy Jr. is saying. Listen to a long-form podcast. Listen to him for an hour and a half and watch something. Take 1 hour and a half and say, wow, the way that guy answers any questions he's asked without stuttering, without skipping, without hiding, without evading, and then does it with historical references from a vast knowledge of these subjects. When he talks about corporate corruption, it's not just a slogan. It's a man who's fought corporate corruption as a lawyer his entire life. I believe that when America looks at these three choices, there's only one person that really rises above. Is beyond it just being comic or entertaining, but actually you say, I am going to put the future, my children's future, in that person's hands. I think that's Robert Kennedy Jr. That's why everyone that's working this campaign is so passionate. We're so excited about the position we find ourselves in. And while Joe Biden is spending literally millions and hundreds of millions of dollars, he is not gaining any ground. We are. When we are having to pay for our security, Joe Biden, who will say, that he cares about Bobby Kennedy, he cares about the Kennedy family, but yet he's not protecting Robert Kennedy Jr. That's insane.
Del Bigtree, our communications director, sir, I know you've been busy. Thank you for taking the time out for us today.
Thank you, Jake.
This is the final episode of We the People right here on News Talk 790 KABC. A big thank you once again to everybody who's tuned in, to the supporters who have shared the links, shared the podcast, all of the different things. A big thank you to 790 KABC. It's been an honor to be on the airwaves here, and we look forward to talking to you again in the future. Once again, any questions you have, feel free to go to Kennedy24.com. I have been your host, Jake Underwood, and remember, it's never goodbye. It's I'll see you later.